Hello, my name is Kelly Simmons. I'm a music education coordinator at Canada's National Arts Centre. Welcome to Ottawa, Ontario. This is part one of a three-part series on Holst's first suite in E-flat for band. In this first part, you will get tips from Karen Donnelly, principal trumpet with the NAC Orchestra, on a number of subjects, from rhythmic practice to tuning for the trumpet parts of the first suite.
Hello. I'm very happy to speak to you today about a few little practice tips for the trumpet, specifically using this Holst first suite in E-flat. So every time I go to practice, the first thing I always think about is, and I like to practice standing up, because the first thing I think about is posture. I want to make sure that I'm sitting up straight, that my shoulders are back and down, my chest is high and up so that the lungs and the whole lungs and diaphragm can move freely, so that my breathing is easy, and as opposed to being slouching in a chair, it's easy to be rolled in a little bit, so I want to be standing up straight and chest high, chin down. And then that allows me to set up to take a good breath. So so that's the first number thing I do. The second thing I do is I always have the metronome going. Always. So this is 92 to the quarter note, and this is rehearsal A. And when I try to approach something like this, it's a militaristic, it's a fanfare type of section. So we want the notes to be clean and nicely centered and nice and crisp, but not forced. So we want the breath to be easy, and we want the sound to be easy. So here, I'll just play, here's letter A in the first movement. So that's from A to B. So ideas about practicing this, always the metronome, and I like to use wind patterns. And thinking about, is the air tight? Is the air controlled and contained, or is it easy and loose? And how's the sound? Is my sound relaxed? Is my sound centered? So doing a wind pattern will help me. Using the mouthpiece. I love to use the mouthpiece. That I just played a little G there, gives me the pitch. And here's the mouthpiece in that passage. And then right away, after I use the mouthpiece, right away the same thing back on the horn, and try to hear if there's any difference. Yeah, so for me, even like I find that there's a difference. I feel like there's more center in the sound, there's more control at the front of the note. The other thing I do sometimes in a pattern like this is I'll add 4 16th notes to make sure that the 16ths are really exactly in rhythm, like this. You see? And then back to as written. So that kind of approach makes it easier for me to, I'm always subdividing the rhythm and trying to stay relaxed. When I'm going up, I try to think down. So when we're going up that scale, as we go up that scale, I try to keep the air on one forward plane and thinking down as I go up. And actually, when I go up, I try to think down. That's a very common approach that allows us to think that the air is moving simply forward on one plane. That's what we want to achieve. In the second movement of the Holst, we have two wonderful opportunities for the trumpet to be featured. The first one is right at the very beginning, and it requires a straight mute. So my first suggestion is the very first note, leave that to the rest of the section. If you're the individual playing the solo, then you're not fussing around with getting the mute in on time. Let the other people cover it. Okay, the other thing is, when we're playing with a straight mute, very often the intonation is raised slightly, so we have to pull the tuning slide ever so slightly so that it stays in tune. So here's the solo at the beginning of the second movement. Metronome going at 72. Great. So when I'm doing a solo with the mute, I often practice it without, so I can make sure that the sound is really nice and centered and that the intonation is really well balanced. So of course, that first interval, G to D, a fifth. So on a B flat trumpet, fourth line D can very often be a little low. So we want to try and make sure that that fifth is a wide interval. So you can use a tuner. There's many apps, great apps that you can get a tuner. So I like to explore that interval of a fifth. I do chromatic movement in there. Making sure that that is a nice wide interval. The second tip I have for this solo at the beginning of the intermezzo is to simplify the melody. Take out the 16th notes and just fill in all the 8th notes throughout, so we can make sure that our rhythm is really clean and clear and that we're really driving forward with the line. You always want to be subdividing inside your head these 8 notes. So when we're playing the solo, we want to have this idea of this momentum. It's marked vivace, so it's got to have a lot of drive and a lot of energy and forward motion. Now I'd like to use the nice solo part at rehearsal D in the intermezzo movement to talk about cantabile playing, singing playing, more legato. It's marked dolce. So here we want to, well, first off, make sure you put your tuning slide back to where you normally have it after using the mute. We don't want to, otherwise we'll be too flat. That's important. And in this character, we want to have a round sound. We want it to be warm. We want to have this like very singing quality. So the type of breath we take will help us. Of course, we have to have this idea in our head using our imagination. And the type of breath we take will help us achieve that kind of warmth in the sound. So it won't be a short, fast breath. I like to take a longer breath, a warmer breath. Of course, again, I have the metronome going, still at 72. So allowing to have the type of character change for this duet, we're going to use a rounder sound. So that means the air is moving gently. and we resist any temptation to push or try to blow too hard. We want that air to be relaxed and the body to be relaxed. The shoulders again are down and we're nice holding the instrument without gripping it too hard. We want it to be relaxed. It's the sound reflects the kind of breath we take. So I think that's a very, very, very important thing to be paying attention at this point. In the third movement of the Holst, we have a couple of exciting things to talk about. What I would suggest is when we're doing an articulated passage that requires fast articulation, like we have here, try to keep those eighth notes as long as you can. Very, like I was saying earlier, very linear, very forward and long. As opposed to chopped. That's quite short. I would suggest a longer airstream that gives us more sound. Here's the metronome. So that the articulation isn't getting stuck and caught up, and we're hearing a nice flow through of your sound through there. A good way to practice that is, of course, slowly and down the octave. And then a little faster until you get to the tempo. I have here 132, but you know, whatever tempo. You want to be ready for anything. And the other thing to talk about, of course, is endurance. This last movement is a real blow. So a few things I would suggest. Number one, try to resist the temptation to be overzealous and go crazy. It's fun to play, we know, but we want the sound to be always in a controlled zone. And we call it the rule of 75. Try to stay within 75% of your maximum. We never want to be at the extreme, because then things go a little crazy, like we lose quality of sound and we lose control of intonation. And this is really important to listen across the section, listen across the ensemble, because this line is doubled, tripled even. You know, it's many people are playing the melody, so we want to have good intonation, and better intonation will allow for more projection. So in fact, if we're working a little less than playing in tune, it's going to sound rich and full. So there you go. The rule of 75. And of course, the idea of like really feeling the corners, try to keep the corners firm using fast air, and let the air be very fast in here, so that we're resisting the temptation to push the trumpet against our face, and we're blowing that fast air forward. Always listening across, so we have a really nice, exciting finish to this great piece.
In the next video, you will see Lawrence Vine talk about the French horn in Holst's first suite for band. We would love to hear from you. Please send your feedback and questions in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and keep practicing.